Well, good morning and howdy. For those of you who are out of state, don't get scared. Howdy is just how Texans say, how y'all doing? Welcome to the South Texas is Texas 2 panel. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you all for participating in our Texas Public Policy Foundation policy orientation. I hope it has been enjoyable and informative. And I always find that the best thing about policy orientation is the people, and getting to know the people, talk to the people, exchange ideas, exchange perspectives, and that's what we're all about in order so we can find appropriate conservative solutions for the issues that face our great state. This panel may seem a little odd to have at a policy conference, right? I mean, the title suggests it's a little tongue-in-cheek, a geography lesson. South Texas is Texas 2. But unfortunately, for those not from the area, many people think that Texas stops at San Antonio, and they don't think there's anything south of San Antonio, and or that the only thing south of San Antonio is the border and that place where we want to build a wall. But I can assure you that South Texas is a wonderful place. It's full of history, great people, unique culture, and it is a dynamic and vital part of our great state. And to explore this region, we have 4 stellar panelists with us, and which I will be introducing right now. So with us, we have the Honorable Texas Senator Pete Flores. Senator Flores represents the District 19, the Texas Senate. He was raised in South Texas and born in Laredo, and served 27 years as a Texas game warden, achieving the top rank of colonel and overseeing the entire law enforcement division of 500-plus wardens, becoming the first Hispanic colonel warden in history. He's now obviously retired from being a game warden, but serving in the capacity of as a Texas State Senator, and splits his time with the legislature, traveling across the massive district, which is District 19, and it's the largest district, and with his family in Pleasanton. And then next to him, we have Jerry Swayable, who is the Corporate Executive Vice President of IBC Bank, and he frequently represents IBC Bank and customers with top government and business leaders in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Jerry's from Laredo. He's based out of Laredo. He has presented expert testimony before Congress on issues regarding U.S.-Mexico trade, including North American Free Trade Agreement, transportation, logistics, international finance, and U.S. immigration reform. He began to work with IBC Bank after distinguished service in the United States Army, where he served as an artillery officer in Germany and in the Republic of Korea. His many affiliations and leadership positions include the 1993 National Chairman of the Border Trade Alliance and Binational Director of the U.S.-Mexico Chamber of Commerce, and he currently serves as Chairman of the Regional Advisory Council for the University of Texas Health Science Center, Laredo campus, and is a member of the Board of Advisors to Texas A&M International University. Next to him, we have a good friend of mine, Nelson Bolito, who is chairman of the Border Commerce and Security Council. Previously, he was the president of the Border Trade Alliance. He was a presidential pick to lead a private sector division of Federal Emergency Management Agency, and also served on the Homeland Security Advisory Council, where he was awarded an Outstanding Public Service Medal, served as Commissioner to the Texas Commission on the Arts, and a member of the Texas Historical Records Advisory Board, appointed by Governor of Texas, and various other positions with municipal agencies, nonprofit boards. Currently is active with the U.S. Navy Reserves as a public affairs officer in U.S. Southern Command, and a board member of the Border Patrol Foundation. And Nelson is very well versed in security issues up and down the border, not only Texas, but the entire border from here to San Diego, from Brownsville to San Diego, and also involved with bilateral trade with Mexico. And last but not least, we have my also good friend Sergio Sanchez, who is a conservative radio talk show host from the Valley, from McAllen. It's 710 KURV radio in McAllen, and he joined KURV in 1995 as a co-news anchor for the Valley Morning News between 1998 and 1999, worked as KURV news director, and is currently serving as the program director. He's received numerous awards from the Texas Associated Press broadcasters, including Best Reporter, Best Spot News Bio Reporter, and Best News Anchor. He also won Best Radio Commentary in Texas from the Texas Associated Press broadcasters, and is a member of the Hidalgo County Salvation Army Advisory Board, and assists the Lone Star chapter of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, and very active conservative in South Texas. So, gentlemen, thank you all for coming. I know that you've all come a long way, and I appreciate your participation. And so let's get to it, and let's explore the mysteries of South Texas. Senator, obviously you have a long connection. Can you explain your connection to South Texas and your affection for South Texas, and a little bit about your district and what's going on?
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you all very much for allowing me the privilege to come and visit and speak about, first of all, our beloved Texas, but our beloved South Texas. But I also represent West Texas, and I love it all. And I grew up in Laredo, and Laredo's been there since 1725. So we're talking about a part of Texas that, when it was called Texas, that has been well over 300 years, and it's a dynamic melting pot of where people have come from all over the world and made their fortunes in our manner and intermarried and created great stories, and all of them are the story of Texas. But it's a like most of Texas, but especially in South Texas, we are generally strongly rooted in our faith, strongly rooted in our family, and very patriotic. And you'll find that many of the most eminent Medal of Honor winners and others have come from South Texas. And because of those core values that still exist very strongly throughout our Texas, but especially in South Texas. And so my mother's side of the family, for example, go back 6 generations in South Texas. And my father's side, with my great-grandfather, came from Mexico, from Bustamante, Nuevo Leon, when great-grandpa got on the wrong side of the revolution and had to come to Texas. But he came to South Texas, or I wouldn't be here. But it's that people have to understand that we're not apart from Texas, but a part of Texas, even before Texas was a republic. And so when you go down there, just understand that it's not a foreign land. It is Texas, and when you go down there to preach about what we should change, but rather to talk about how we are similar in as Texans. So I'm very honored and to be able to be associated and represent a part of South Texas, as well as a large part of West Texas. But our cultures are pretty much the same, deeply rooted in those strong values of faith, family, and our nation.
That's great. Thank you, Senator. And that's very true. South Texas is very rooted, has very deep foundations and very strong core. I'd like to ask you, can you just talk a little bit about how you've seen the area change, during your lifetime, and how that looks?
Well, I mean, just if you look at our border towns, of course, with a booming economy, if for example, Laredo surpasses Los Angeles as the #1 inland port of commerce in the United States. more commerce goes through inland port of Laredo than Los Angeles, California. And so it replaced it as the #1 port of entry in commerce. So that alone has brought, of course, a market growth in the economy. It's also made South Texas place in the national scale, national economy on a top shelf level, and of course that's occurring throughout our border towns, Eagle Pass, Del Rio, that I represent. That commerce with Mexico is absolutely critical, not only to Texas, but to the United States of America, and that occurs through the Port of Laredo in South Texas, as an example. So we also had the oil field in the Eagle Ford Shale, which again contributed to our great state and our nation being able to become, de facto, if we were our own nation, the third largest oil producer in the world, because of the Eagle Ford and the Permian. But those types of great advances in commerce, oil and gas, and as well as a very talented population, have made us a top shelf area in the world.
Thank you. And let's continue that conversation, Jerry, a little bit. Senators touched upon that, and South Texas is not only the original home of delicious Tex-Mex food, but it's also a very vital link to the economy of Texas, right? And as the banker for Laredo in the South Texas area, can you delve a little bit more into why that is that important, and what's the actual scope and how that all works, the dynamics of that?
Sure. Thank you very much. Thank you also, TPPF, for inviting me. It's great to be here with our native senator. He's being modest. His dad was a well-known, leader of our community, and it was great to see, now you, the next generation, also continue the legacy of what your family has meant for us in South Texas. So we thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I wake up every morning and I thank the Lord that I live in Texas and that I live in Laredo, Texas. How many of you have been to Laredo, Texas? Raise your hand.
Okay.
Great. And obviously you drove down I-35. And really what I've always said is that the person that we should recognize first and foremost in Laredo, Texas, is that person who decided that I-35 would start and end in Laredo, Texas. That is, we are a trade community. And that statue, that individual, I've been looking for that person for many years, and looking at the history of the whole interstate highway system. I will find that. I will find out who that is. Because South Texas, Laredo, Texas, is a true picture of the significance of what our trade policy is of North America that allows us to compete on a global basis. I look out my window of my office in Laredo, and it's I-35, and I see all the cars. I used to see all the trucks. And I have a railroad. Kansas City Southern also has a rail line right behind me. And I love to hear the whistle blow over that train, and I love to see the trucks. And I drive every week into San Antonio, and I love going around and looking at all this volume of trade activity, which is creating jobs for our region. Prior to the USMCA, prior to NAFTA, a city like Laredo, cities like Edinburgh, cities like McAllen, cities like Brownsville, our unemployment rate was double digit, almost 20%, 17, 16%. 1 out of 2 kids were dropping out of school at the 9th and 10th grade. The brain drain of many of us that were, growing up in Laredo, to leave Laredo and never come back. Never come back to the border. Never come back to South Texas. But really the panorama has totally changed. We've got more people coming into South Texas wanting to come and do business. And for cities like ours, in ports as significant as we are, it's important for people to understand in Washington, but also in Austin, the significance of these cities are critical for the success of Texas and for the success of the United States and for the success of all of North America to compete on a global basis. I tell that story everywhere I go. I was born in Laredo, I was raised in Laredo. You know, we're a bicultural community. We're one city, Laredo, we're one city united by a river. Beautiful river, our best asset. And yes, we grew up as bicultural, many of us from our families, you know, but we tell the story. One of the challenges that we face is when people come and want to learn about South Texas or cities like Laredo, they come in and hear it from the people that have not really grown up or lived it. They may come with our due respect to our law enforcement folks, and they want to, especially I'm sure we'll talk about with Nelson about security, they want to hear things that they already, you know, in their mind, have made up their mind what they want to hear. But they won't sit with the private sector. They don't sit with the educators. They won't sit with the small and medium-sized businesses to tell the story of why the challenges that we're facing that would benefit the entire country. So when I say that we are ports of national significance, in Texas alone, we have 28 ports of entry. But from Laredo to Brownsville, there are 18 ports, mainly the state of Tamaulipas. Nelson knows this very well. The state of Tamaulipas, the state of Coahuila, the state of Nuevo León, and the state of Chihuahua, which abuts Texas, are such dynamic states as well for Mexico. So you combine the efforts of northern Mexico with Texas, and importantly, Nuevo León and Tamaulipas to South Texas, it really becomes a mega trade center for the world. And people don't understand that. Mexico continues to be a robust manufacturing platform for the automotive sector for the world. And we don't make anything, we don't manufacture anything in Laredo. We service the trade community. I, as a banker, my day today, the environment that we're in today, I wake up and I listen to La Mañanera from President López Obrador, his press conference, and then I got to wait for the tweets that start coming in about 8:30 in the morning to understand and dictate what my day will be. I look at the exchange rate of the peso dollar. That's my business. I live it every day. So I advise my clients, and I advise anyone who's interested in knowing what's going on, that the true story of the success of Texas really begins through our ports of entry and through South Texas. Yet, perhaps, as the Senator said, it is the least understood region of this country. And when people talk about the border, or they talk about South Texas, I won't say it's a different land. They think it's a different planet. And they don't understand it. They go down there, but until they come down and they see and meet with the people, and they see the thriving economy of what really trade has meant for us, then they understand the story. In the transportation side, I'll close with one thing.
No, keep going.
One of the things that I'm involved in numerous advisory committees. I'm on the Texas Freight Mobility Committee. I'm on the Board of Trade Advisory Committee, telling the story about South Texas. And Governor Abbott and the Texas Transportation Commission were talking about congestion in cities like Austin, and in other cities like communities like Waco or Dallas and Houston. I would tell everyone, to come down to South Texas. If you want to stop congestion, you shut down the borders and you stop these trucks. You won't have any congestion in those cities. But if you want to have the vitality of the economy, and transportation is the largest employer next to healthcare in Texas, then you've got to understand that there are infrastructure needs that are critical for the success of Texas that start in South Texas. In Laredo, as I said, we have IH-35. In the Valley, we're working on I-69, the new interstate. The newest interstate we're talking about now will be I-27, which will become the energy corridor that will go through rural West Texas to the Permian Basin. Because for us, it starts in South Texas. I've always said, I didn't coin it, but I wish I had, our geography is our destiny. So for us in South Texas, you take trade, and you look at energy. The only thing we need is more leaders like this gentleman to my right that can show that there's a political will to working together for the benefit of all of Texas, not for just certain parts of Texas. So that's the story I try to tell to everyone. And throughout my travels in Washington or in Mexico or Canada, I try to tell the story of what really South Texas is about. And that's an example, just a little bit of what we talk about.
That's absolutely fantastic, and it's very true. The strength of any community is its people, and the people of South Texas are very vibrant, strong, entrepreneurial people. Jerry, before we kick it over to Nelson, can you attach some numbers on the impact of the trade, like how much how much goes through the port, and so people get a better sense of the actual scope of what we're talking about?
Sure. As I said, we're a trade community. In Texas, we have 5 customs districts. And you may or may not be aware of it, but next to the IRS, the largest generator of revenue for our country are customs duties. So Texas alone has 5 customs districts. Laredo District, which is by far the largest customs district, which stretches from Del Rio down to the valley, generated over $280 billion of trade. El Paso, Dallas, Houston are other customs districts. There's 5, I said there's 5. Anybody want to guess who the 5th customs district in Texas is? It's a good trivia question. If anybody wants to know. Believe it or not, it's Port Arthur. And a lot of people don't know that. You want to trick somebody. Ask them who the 5 customs districts of Texas are. They may name 4 of them, maybe 3 of them, but they won't name the 5th one. But for us, Texas alone is responsible for over, just the border alone, El Paso, over $700 billion of revenue that comes out of our trade. In Laredo, we talk about trucks. Like I said, we love trucks. Over 14,000 trucks crossing every day. Our Border Patrol checkpoint averages 5,000 trucks a day. Now, we in the communities like us in South Texas, the border region, our sources basically for our economy, we're small communities. El Paso is the largest. The MSA of the valley, I'm sure Sergio will share with you, which is much larger. But we're a community of 260,000 people. Our revenues from our cities like ours come from bridge tolls, come from ad valorem taxes, and from sales tax receipts, the shoppers that come in from Mexico, which we love. So that's our economy. Yet we control our own destiny, and it's hard to tell the story unless we've got the right leaders that understand clearly what South Texas means to Austin and to Washington. And hopefully we continue to do that by electing folks like our senator right here. So that's the story we tell. The volume is there, and understanding clearly that what we do out of Austin or out of Washington for the border or for South Texas will benefit the entire nation, not just South Texas. We all want progress. We all want vitality. My community now has less than 4% unemployment rate. I'm a banker. I'm short 400 tellers in my banks throughout Texas, constantly looking. It's a new challenge. Some say it's a good challenge to be in, but we really need to, now raise the bar and understand clearly how do we meet those challenges of having good quality jobs and having our young men and women want to stay and contribute to the communities where they were born and where they live every day. The Hispanic community, which is predominantly what we are made of, many of them are universities like Texas A&M International University or now UT, Rio Grande, RGV. Those Hispanic communities, many of them are first-generation college students. They're not, many of them are not capable, not been out of town. Our president of Texas A&M International University tells a story that many of these kids have not even been outside of Laredo in their lives. They've never traveled outside of Laredo. So for them to go to college and offer that capability, whether it's a technical school or a university, it's great that they can have that capability and stay here and contribute and create jobs. The entrepreneurial spirit of the Hispanic, the hard work ethic of the Hispanic, it's there. That's the biggest asset that we have. And at the end of the day, the reminder that in trade, people trade. Governments don't trade. So we are the ones that make it. And we're resilient in Texas, and we're resilient in South Texas.
Thank you. That was a great explanation on the day-to-day and the dynamic of what's going on there. And Nelson, let's bring you into the conversation. And I failed to mention that you're also a Fox News contributor, and you're in the national media quite frequently, and you get asked questions all the time, right? So it's not only the positive impact about trade that's happening, but a lot of people hear a more negative side, which is the security, right? And quite honestly, there's a balance that needs to happen there, right? Because people, yes, want to trade and prosper, but people also want to be secure, right? And you have a lot of experience, a lot of cross-border experience in the region, both from a perspective of trade, but also from a perspective of security. And you've worked with entities on both sides of the border. How do we balance that? How does that work?
Well, thank you for having me, and certainly to the Texas Public Policy Foundation for having and such a distinguished panel. And certainly I've been to Jerry's office and seen it outside his window. It's been a few years, but I know what he's talking about. And what he didn't mention is that the other source of revenue for Laredo is speeding tickets. So,
I'm sure you've
that I-35
contributed
corridor
quite
can get real
frequently.
tough.
That's not all
Yeah, speeding tickets. But thank you for the opportunity of being here. And I'll tell you, so how do you balance trade and security? It's certainly something that we hear in the national news media a lot, but all you hear is about security. What's happening, the next caravan that's coming, the migrant protection protocols, the deportations, the wall. When you're talking about security and you're talking about a wall and you're talking about these things, it's very easy to communicate a wall. It's very easy to communicate, we need to secure the border, because all of us have walls around our homes, our businesses. We understand walls, we understand barriers. What we don't understand is trade and security, and that's a hard thing to explain to the American public. At all levels, and not just the American public. It's the same thing whether I'm here in Austin talking to legislators or I'm in Washington, D.C. talking to members of Congress. The same thing. They just simply don't understand. And it's not just that. If I go to Mexico City and talk to their members, it's just unless you're from the border, unless you're involved in these things, it's very difficult to comprehend. They don't understand it. It's not a talking point. You can't very easily describe it. And like Jerry was mentioning, and the senator, and I'm sure Sergio will as well, it's as long as it took him to explain that, that's not a talking point in the national news media. There's no possible way you're going to get that kind of time to be able to explain these things, right? So we want more international trade. We want more legal trade and travel. We want less illegal trade and travel, right? So when we talk about securing our national borders, it's not just the wall or the illegal immigration, but what we fail to look at, and it's hard to explain, is how do you secure our international ports of entries, right? When you're having, like Jerry said, or Laredo, 14,000 trucks, and at a national basis, close to 18,000 trucks on a daily basis, $1 million a minute flows through over that national border, the southern border, $1 million a minute. I think it was last year's over $650 billion of international trade. Mexico's our number one trading partner now, number one. So how do you balance that? How do you look at securing all those trucks? Well, if I'm a drug dealer and I want to smuggle my drugs, I'm going to put some stuff on 10 trucks, knowing that 2 may get caught and 6, 7, or 8 may get through. Because simply the fact is that the amount of drugs that come to this country simply cannot flow in between the ports of entries. Do you have two or three people running backpacks with drugs, or do you have the wholesale distribution that you can come through our ports of entries? How do you balance that? Customs officers do a great bang up job, but there's no way you can grab all the drugs that are flowing over the border, and that's really what my biggest concern. Sure, the illegal immigration is a problem. Sure, these caravans are a problem, right? But we should be more concerned when fentanyl, which is one of the leading drugs of killers now in the United States, that killed more people in the United States than people die of cancer last year. If you take a salt shaker and you put that on a table, just 2 little grams is enough. 2 little grains is enough to kill you. So drug dealers are cutting this stuff and putting it in other drugs. You say why? Because it's a bigger high, because you can still function. You can still function when you're high on fentanyl, right? So there's a big problem of the international drug trade, and how do you stop that? And how do you stop that is we have to have international partners, especially the Mexican partners, that cooperate. We had a great partnership with the previous administration. They really helped out a lot with the war on drugs. This one is a little bit more different, right? This current administration in Mexico has taken more of a back seat on being more reactive instead of proactive. I know because I work with Homeland Security every day. I work with the intelligence officials. I work with every border sector chief from San Diego to Brownsville, and this is what they tell me, both inside the Beltway and outside the Beltway, right? We have some issues. Now, we talk about migrant protection protocols, and we hear, well, the Mexican president's doing a great job in protecting illegal aliens coming north. And yeah, but how is that sustainable? Is that sustainable? I think it's not sustainable. I think that's just a matter of time before he runs out of money or something happens. And you look at the economy in Mexico that continuously has regressed. He's put some very anti-business protocols since his administration, including the oil and gas tenders that we were going. Everything was going towards the public sector and private tenders and so forth, just like you have here in the U.S. and in various other countries throughout the world. And he's stopped all that. Right? He's making more of a nationalistic attitude. Something to take a look at, because we don't understand what some of these repercussions can be. And if we think we have a problem with the illegal immigration now, imagine if you have a sector south of the border that gets more and more restrictive, and people start losing jobs, start losing maquila jobs. Then you start looking at what the U.S. is calling in the future like a massive migration problem, right? Which we actually practiced these things when I was in the Bush administration. We thought Cuba could be a massive migration problem like they did in the 1980s, right? When you had problems like that. Not to scare anybody, but things are to keep an eye out on what's happening based on especially policies south of the border. But at $1 million a minute, there's, international trade is so important. How do we educate our legislators? How do we educate folks that how many more folks can we get on board? If you look at all the legislators on the southern border that understand, it's a very small percentage, Republican and Democrat, from San Diego to Brownsville, that most of them understand what's going on. I would think so. Some of them don't, but you want them to. And, comparison to the other hundreds of other members of Congress, how do you talk? I'll tell you, Henry Cuellar has been a great stalwart when it comes to international trade. Great guy for border security, supporter. He's on the Homeland Security Appropriations Committee and has been a great friend of the Border Patrol out of Laredo. And he's done more for border security and international trade than most people that I know that has ever been in Congress. And so he's become a very good friend on both sides of the border. But I will say that we need to figure out how do you unlock this? And really it's how do you take out the cartels? We have these, it's become very popular now on Netflix, Hulu, these programs that you hear on cartel wars,
Right.
and,
Narco traficantes.
narco wars, narco this, narco that. Look, a lot of that stuff is not so far from the tree, okay? But it's become popular. But those are the people that are running not only drugs but humans. It has now become, and this is a statistic from Homeland, become more lucrative to smuggle people than drugs. Because the people are going to get over the border sooner or later. And at $7,000 a head is what they charge. If I'm bringing you from Central America, $5,000 to $7,000 a head. They come here and they become indentured servants for a number of years until they're released from that, until they pay off their fine. If they don't pay off their fine, somebody else back home pays the price, right? Because they keep people back home. No one crosses this border for free. When you hear these caravans, people smug coming, nobody just wakes up and says, I think today I'll just cross the border and go to the United States. Those routes, and the reason you see the violence south of the border is because it's infighting. It's cartel and cartel violence. The U.S. citizen that goes over there, you're not a target. Look, there's petty crime everywhere, right? You can go downtown here and get mugged, if you're not careful, or other places. But you got to be careful, right? I mean, if you're looking for trouble, you're going to find trouble. But what I'm saying is that it's cartel and cartel violence, and they're fighting for space. And the more restrictive we become, which is a good thing, I believe, the more fighting you have for space south of the border. If I'm crossing my 100 kilos of cocaine every month, and now you've taken part of my land because you've put more wall or put more patrols or whatever that may be. Well, now I still need to cross my product. I need the other guy to scoot over, so I'm going to go chop that guy out. And that's the unfortunate thing that you see south of the border, is that you see this violence, but and how do you balance that? So really the question is how do we educate our legislators? How do we educate people both in Mexico City and outside the Beltway here in Austin and inside the Beltway in Washington, D.C.? It's certainly a very important rhetoric that needs to be continuously talked about. And like Jerry said, I mean, he talks about this everywhere you go. I talk about it everywhere I go. But there's not a whole lot of Jerrys and Nelsons out there to really, make a huge impact, because simply we're insiders. We understand the process. We understand how it works. We need more insiders, because I'll tell you, the future of Texas depends on international trade. And I think it's a great opportunity, and really it's North American security, in my opinion. It's North American security, both in oil and gas, energy security is national security, right? So how do you look at all these things in a block, Canada included, right? I think Canada plays a huge role in North American security, right? And least dependent in foreign oil and foreign. We're competing with China, we're competing with India, we're competing with a European bloc, North America, and we can grow, and we can grow strong. But certainly there needs to be cooperative governments working, and folks that really know what's going on, and hopefully through these types of sessions and national news media, we can communicate that message and get more people on board. This is a message that I hear that gets recycled year over year over year. As long as Jerry's been involved with this, and I've known Jerry for a decade, we've been talking about the same subject from day one. We need infrastructure. We need more people on the border. We need more security. We need to increase international trade. We need better regulations. Yeah, and it just keeps going on and on, right? But what we see is an increase of international trade, which is great. That means more jobs and more security. And then the other thing is not, when we talk international trade, it's not just the trucks flowing over the border. I want to say it's $3 to $6 billion. I mean, you may know the statistic, Jerry, of folks that come over and spend tax dollars here in Texas. Yep. I mean, how many times have we gone to San Marcos, a little south of here, and it's packed? And it's packed, especially during like spring breaks and Christmases, and it's packed. And you see all these license plates from Michoacán or la Ciudad de Mexico or Tamaulipas or one of those, right? Well, what do you see? I mean, it's packed. These people are leaving tax revenue here, right?
They're investing in Texas too.
They're investing in our infrastructure. They cross the border. They leave money on the tolls, right? They may get a ticket too. Except they take them directly to the ATM there. But the thing is that so they can pay their fine. But you look at these things, and it's robust. And how do we facilitate this trade? We want more people to come over here. We want the legal trade and travel. We want more of that stuff. We want the less of the illegal. But that's really all we talk about. The illegal stuff the border incursions. We never talk about the good side of this thing, which is really the economic engine that's really powering Texas and certainly the region.
Yeah, fantastic perspective, Nelson. Again, putting that balance right between security and trade, and which and what's unfortunately stuck in the middle is the good people, and actually the good people on both sides of the border, right? And we have the good people on our side of the border, and there are good people on the other side of the border. And I know you do a lot of cross-border trade. Sergio, let's get you in the conversation here, and we focused a little bit on Laredo. Let's move a little bit over and talk about RGV, McAllen. Give us a tour.
By the way, thanks for the invite to speak with you folks today. I live in McAllen, and as I define it, not only on my talk show, but when I get the privilege to do, like Dana Lash, for example. Dana Lash, she's the top-rated female talk show host in the nation, right? She's number one, female. And we struck up a friendship some years back, and, well, I guess I'm the go-to guy now when I fill in, and I call it Southern Command in McAllen. I have to repeat myself to many folks who reach out from other parts of the country, from Ohio, from Illinois, from Indiana. Say, what's it like? What's it like? And I go, oh, I know why they asked me that. They think we're like running down the street shooting each other every single day like the Wild Wild West, right? They do. There is a grotesque media, journalism malpractice taking place in our country. Our free press, thank God for it, keep it free. I'm a defender of the First Amendment. But I tell you what, our free press in this nation, the things that they spoon feed working people every single day, it's real expensive. Ignorance is real expensive. And I'm going to say a little joke about Laredo versus McAllen here in a second, but I'm going to say it for a reason. Hey, hang on. Because every time I introduce Henry Cuellar on the show, which, by the way, Henry is our Western Valley congressman for our region, this title, this conversation we're having, that South Texas is Texas too, that's pretty much the definition of a lot what I've been doing for a quarter century. I started this gig at this one news radio station in McAllen 25 years ago. I'm the exception. I'm not the norm in radio. You know how people get thrown on the street all the time in my business. But I managed to be there for 25 years. I've been blessed with good owners, good company, and the staying power of a news, talk, radio station that, unlike other formats, they change all the time. I saw and let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in McAllen. I grew up in Reynosa as a boy. The peso devaluation that Jerry was telling me about back in 1976, that's the one that put the fear of God in my dad when he said, that's it, I don't want my boy growing up in Reynosa, I don't want him in Mexico. So he patiently waited his turn. He worked for a job opportunity, it took him many years, they finally got it. Through family, trucking business, and scaffolding, and fed my ungrateful mouth as a teenager in Houston. And eventually I moved back to McAllen with my wife. And as I have to tell people who call in to the Dana Show when I'm filling in for, or they reach out via email, I tell them, guys, we're fine. I live in the United States of America. Everything north of the river, we're fine people. I'm raising two boys, a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. We go to the park every other day. I don't go to the park every day. My wife says I need to go to the park every day. You know, a lot of stuff's in the midsection. But we're safe. Literally, like McAllen is like one of the safest cities per capita as far as crime than compared to Houston, compared to any other part of the nation. But what's taking place, this lack of information, I put it on New York. I put it on Atlanta. I put it on Washington. I put it on the president of Los Angeles. Because working people, the American populace, they consume information in tidbits, little headlines, 2-minute newscasts, 5-minute newscasts. They come home, they shove something in their mouth after working 16-hour days, and they catch something from the clueless news network, as I refer to it now, Fox or whoever's, and they pick up here and there, and they're not getting reality, much less what's taking place on the border. As I tell people when I fill in national and I get a chance to speak to colleagues in New York who call me and say, hey, where's McAllen? And I tell them, well, you know where San Antonio's at, right? Because that's where you think Texas ends. We're the southernmost suburb of San Antonio, about 3.5 hours south of downtown. That's where we are. But this thing about South Texas being Texas 2, I have to do a lot of repair work, a lot of patchwork, a lot of fixing, because the real story is not being told. And I believe, in talking with people from the Valley Chamber, people from the Rio South Texas group, developers, and Jerry probably knows them very well, a lot of people in leadership in South Texas, I think that there is a role for Texas leadership, senior leadership in our state, which, by the way, we're blessed, I would say. I'm so blessed. I'm a big fan of Greg Abbott. And I thank Rick Perry for all the work that he did in reaching out to South Texas. Look, folks. Now, here comes a joke, Jerry. Rio Grande Valley, where am I? It's the Texas coast at the tip of Texas. Brownsville is at the tip of Texas. That's Brownsville. That's my largest city. The Rio Grande Valley of Texas is a 4-county area. It's Cameron, where Brownsville is at. Willacy, a farming and 8-liner community north of us. Hidalgo County, which is the largest, that's where McAllen, Edinburgh, Weslaco, everybody's there. And then Starr County, it's a 4-county area. 1.25 million people. That's a rough estimate right now. 1.25 million people. So when everybody's saying, hey, I say it, the greatest resource in the valley is our kids. We have the youngest population in the entire state of Texas. It needs to be educated properly to sop up the fortunes that are on the way. The Rio Grande Valley has arrived. When I try to explain to people the difference between Laredo and McAllen, like with Henry, for example, Henry Cuellar, our congressman, difference between McAllen and Laredo is in McAllen we got indoor plumbing. Oh, someone really like that. Good, thank you. I'll be here all week. But Texas, sorry, Jerry. I say that, and I'll go ahead and say, Friday night football mentality. It has to stop. It has to stop on the border. It has to stop in Texas. Texas is more than Houston, San Antonio, and Dallas. I was waiting for somebody from Austin to squeal, say, hey, it's Austin, as well. I got news for you, Austin. You guys are going to be violently taken over by San Antonio. You're going to be a San Antonio suburb sometime in the next 20 years. Like in 20 years, the Rio Grande Valley of Texas, where I live, they say population, as quickly as we're exploding right now, we're going to be the size of San Antonio, what is right now. We better get ready, people. And we got demographers from A&M, everybody taking a look at what's taking place on the international trade side. Despite the violence that's taking place south of the border, south of the river. Again, as I say on my talk show and on the national show, I live in the land of 911. In Reynosa, they live in the land of Nel Juan, because they don't have reliable police down there. They don't have reliable law enforcement. I do. Whatever is going on, at least I know 99.99%. I like to believe 99.99% of my law enforcement, my sheriffs, my police officers, all of them are good men and women who love their country, love their community, and they enforce law. It's the land of rule of law. It's the United States of America. We're blessed to live here, but we have to tell our story. There is a role for senior leadership in Texas to do more than just come and visit. The governor come and visit us, and thank God that he comes and visits us more often. Thank God that he's overseas at Davos, shaking hands, making deals, and doing it in Jerusalem. We just need a little bit more support in getting the message out there. So I say all that to you just to swing that the piñata with this proposal, that we reinforce somehow policymakers, lawmakers in Texas, they think outside the box, because the unifying message from economic development folks from Rio South Texas, from the Valley Chamber, from successful economic development entities on my side of the border that set up factories on the international side, on the Reynosa side. We need to get our story out there. It might mean that on the economic development side, which is an arm of the governor's office, and that's the cookie jar for EDC on the governor's side, that maybe we should be investing and fighting toe-to-toe with Illinois, Ohio, the Carolinas, in Europe, in Asia, and even a liaison in Washington if necessary to get our story out, because people don't understand that Texas is more than San Antonio, Houston, and Dallas. And the Rio Grande Valley, the way it's growing right now, we have arrived, people. There are tens and tens of billions of dollars that are coming. LNG cash, private sector money, not government funding. And those are thousands of jobs. And tell you what, our children are in the valley, we're not ready to sop up those jobs, and we should be. It requires courage to retrofit ISD curriculum, college curriculum, technical school, and even the university. We got a very courageous new president, UTRGV, has a new medical school, and it's growing by leaps and bounds. All these people discovering that, hey, we're missing Latino data when it comes to medical research and clinical studies and all that. They're coming to us. They don't know what to do. They're overwhelmed, and I'm thankful for that. But we have private sector capital to the tune of billions of dollars. Governor Perry was there with Elon Musk moving dirt in Brownsville. That's part of the advocacy from senior leadership. We just need to reinforce the senior leadership advocacy to bring more Elon Musk, to bring more energy money. And senior leadership in Texas to be courageous enough to say, our capital, our greatest asset, yes, it's our kids, our schools. We do need to create the pipeline so we are not importing labor from other states, other nations. Our babies, our children can be trained to cut metal, fuse metal, bend metal, stamp metal, whatever's necessary. Get those $60,000, $70,000, $100,000 paying jobs. Be the journeyman, be the guys that go become the electrician. They can do that. Not everybody needs to go to the university. And I know at this very moment, Tom Torgelson from Idea Public Schools, which, by the way, the Rio Grande Valley has given birth, thanks to Tom Torgelson and thanks to Joanne Gama. The Rio Grande Valley, Texas, has given birth to the most successful, largest charter school system in the nation. It's called IDEA. And I know that because my babies go to IDEA. I know that because for the past 10 years, I was blessed to be a board member and see the explosive growth of IDEA public schools, that charter. And his advocacy is college for everybody. So yes, college for everybody, but for everyone, a career. And sop up the wealth that's coming to Texas. The LNG money, the propulsion systems, the life systems work for Elon Musk. Go back to Elon Musk. Hey, Elon, I understand you're making electric cars. Yeah, we can make those too. We train our kids over here to work your assembly line, make those batteries. We can do that. We just need senior leadership to message that for us and be courageous enough to retrofit education to create that pipeline.
What can I say? Amen, brother. Amen. Let me reel you in a little bit because I know you can talk. And before you announce a candidacy of something or other.
I did that already. I didn't tell you. I was the Republican Party chairman between 2014 and 2018.
That's right.
And I was there at the GOP convention. The whole thing got Donald Trump elected.
That's right.
You're welcome, by the way.
That's right. Thank you. Before we go into Q&A, I do want to kind of bring it back home and, Senator, get you back involved in this conversation and talk about, again, showing, looping it back to the premise of the panel, right? South Texas, Texas 2. And it's not only showing the vitality and the importance of the region, but also the commonality of the region with the rest of the state of Texas, right? So there's some legislative issues that are common throughout the state and that real Texans are just having a problem with. And some of them are issues, Senator, that you've championed, fights on property tax reform and relief, anti-corruption efforts and that kind of stuff. Do you want to kind of touch upon what some of your priorities are and how that impacts not only South Texas, but is also systemic to all Texans?
Yes, thank you, and thank you all very much for your comments on this. And I'll just say, it's as someone who represents 463 miles of the Texas-Mexico border and 2 ports of entry. This is a story of all of us along not only South Texas but along the border in general and border conversations, and thank you for your comments and making sure that our part of the state is not defined by drug dealers and violence and corruption,
Exactly.
because it's not. And that narrative has to stop. And it stops when it stops at our ears, like gossip, but as we go about and tell the story of us and what we do and what we mean for the economy and what we mean for America and our basic values, and that we are part of the southern part, the western part, but we're all Texans with core Texas values that have made Texas stand alone in the world, as has been described, a shining light. And because of the things that we hold in common. And so we want to make sure that we don't define us by the drug dealers. I think of the panel here, I believe I'm probably the only one that's patrolled the Rio Grande River in a law enforcement capacity. And I can tell you that there's stretches, well, in my experience, I was probably safer walking along the Rio Grande at night than I were in some neighborhoods in the immediate area. So, but yes, those are things that we have to address with. Yes, they exist, but it's not what defines us. What defines us is basically what the panel has been talking about in the economy, in the gift of the people that we have in our area of the state, in what we call las ganas of the people, the will of the people, the guts to go do things, the spirit. But along those lines, we don't want to have anything to hinder that progress that we're making, the great progress and that continuing story of us, and that what we work for, we need to keep. And that is the little piece of the Texas sky that belongs to us needs to stay with us. And that I'll just say that I visited a school the other day, and the children in the particular class I was visiting were talking about government. And what they were speaking about was that how good it was for the government to take care of them, and how good it was for them to obey the government. And I reminded them, I said, well, let me tell you, do you think I work, I rule you? I said, did you know that I work for you? That you're the boss, and we're a republic? And they said, really? I said, yes. And all those children clapped just like y'all just did, because they weren't hearing that. But we have to continue as we go about our daily lives, and especially in service, to remind that we are in a republic, and that taxation is one of the number one issues, especially property tax reform. Senate Bill 2 was a great step in the right direction, which was tied with House Bill 3 in public education, which was a great step in the right direction, and to remind us in government that we are there to not to hinder but to help, that it shouldn't be not just to be a fair fight, but it shouldn't be a fight at all when it comes to doing our taxes and to paying what's our fair share. And so property tax reform is going to continue into the 87th, especially as it relates to appraisal district reform, something that's very important as we continue our work to expand upon Senate Bill 2, and then to make sure that any public monies that we expend that has been done in a conservative fashion, in that we continue to provide for the quality of life and services for a growing population and a growing demand here in Texas. As the governor said, we stand alone, and we have a $250 billion budget. And standalone, we are the 10th largest economy in the world, and growing. So but we have to continue to maintain our direction to not hinder business, to not hinder progress, to provide for the basic services without overtaxing our population. We need to continue to work on public education in terms of, especially, did you know that the average skilled worker in Texas average age is 50? Unsustainable. unsustainable. And so we need to continue to not only in our education say, yes, we want you to go to college, but yes, we need skilled tradesmen as well. And matter of fact, they probably make more money than most college graduates anyway, and are debt free generally. But these are things that are all important things to talk about as Texas continues to move into the future, as South Texas and our border communities continue to grow, and it's so those two things are top tier issues.
Great, thank you. So, as a matter of fact, we do have, phase 2 of property tax reform and relief. Yep. That's going to be coming up. A couple of other issues that are near and dear to the foundation's heart is, of course, putting an end to taxpayer-funded lobbying. That's going to take a top priority from our perspective looking forward to making sure that people are actually represented in a fair way up here in the legislature. And then also what you spoke about education. Education is important, but we also want to make sure that the education is accountable and transparent, and make sure that the money is actually going to the students and it's going for the purpose that it was designed for. And Senator, we thank you for your service and for your being a champion on all these issues, and we appreciate that. We have about 10 minutes or so left. We want to open it up to some questions. Please avail yourself of these fine speakers, and we'll go from there. Do we have somebody with the mic? All right. First question. Lady in white, then we'll go to the back, and then Adam will come to you.
Good morning, gentlemen. My name is Sandra Whitten. I actually live in Laredo. I have for 11 years. And while I can agree with most of what y'all said, I do have to completely disagree with some of what you said. We do have issues on our border. I live on the river, and I watch people run past my home every day. So it is things that need to be addressed, and I think that part of the problem why we're so secluded is because we try to sweep everything under the rug. Mr. Nelson, you had mentioned that Henry Cuellar has done a lot for our area, and I won't deny that he has. But you also, in the same breath, said for the last 10 years that Jerry and I have known each other, we keep talking about how we still have the exact same problems. We still have an infrastructure problem. We still have a growth and different problems that we have. And yet these are things that 16 years of leadership from Congressman Cuellar has not changed. So I think that one of the things that I have seen in the last 11 years, and especially in the last year that I've been spreading this exact message across the state, is that South Texas literally is Texas also, and that we need attention and we deserve attention, because Laredo specifically, since most of us live there in this conversation, we know that we have over 250,000 people live there, yet we're considered the redheaded stepchild of the state. We do have a booming economy and a booming market and so much opportunity, yet the current leadership, in my opinion, has failed us, not just on the federal level, but on the state and the local level, because we're not able to push past it. People are so afraid of retaliation or that things are not going to change. And my question is that in y'all's leadership as business owners and spokespeople for our area, what has been done to actually change that? Because I've not seen that in 11 years.
Great question. Before your answer, so that's exactly the reason why we had, you can sit down if you want. So that's exactly why we had this panel today, right? Because a lot of people forget about the importance of South Texas, Laredo, McAllen, the whole RGV, and we wanted to bring that to attention. So that's exactly the purpose of this panel. And you're absolutely right, fair point, that there are issues, security issues that have been kicked down the road, not only by specific members of Congress, but by government entirely, right? And they've been kicked down the road for, 40, 50 years now. So, and that's something that we need to address. Nelson, you want to?
Sure. Thank you for your comment. And I know Jerry will probably elaborate a little bit more, but so as the economy continues to grow, and it has in Laredo, we just inaugurated, I think it's an $85 million expansion in the International Bridge, right? But that amount of money?
Well, yeah, those are improvements to Bridgewater.
Yeah, improvements.
Improvements. So some of this infrastructure has continued over these years to improve, but also the trade continues to go up. So you're always trying to play in that catch-up game, right? Always trying to catch up. So there's been a lot of infrastructure put in the Laredo area. I will say that you see people running across the border. Well, what people don't realize is that even if you have a fence there, a border fence, the border fence is on the U.S. side of the border. So if I'm touching the other side of the fence, you're already on U.S. soil, right? So now it's a fence is designed to slow people down, so then hopefully the Border Patrol has an opportunity to go out there and seize and apprehend that individual. To keep people out, it's not keeping anybody out, right? It's gonna slow people down and give that opportunity to do that. I think do we need to do more? Do we need more sensors? I've been evangelizing the idea of new sensors, smart fences, sensors on the fence, off the fence, because we need to understand what's coming. But really what we need is an international partner south of the border that does their part too.
I completely agree with that. In fact, my husband's actually a Border Patrol agent. So I don't disagree with that at all. And in my cry for my argument with people, especially there in Laredo, who say we don't need a wall, I can't tell you how many days in the last 11 years that I've seen pictures upon pictures upon pictures of men, women, children, wives, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, grandparents that have died in the middle of our desertous area because they get lost in the wilderness, literally. So my argument about having a fencing or walling or more security there, which we all know we're desperately undermanned, is that this is a humanitarian issue.
Oh, I agree.
Our agents, and you know, Mr. Nelson, our agents' number one priority is the humanitarian issue that is on our border.
Well, you know that as your husband's a Border Patrol agent, the hundreds of lives that are saved on a daily basis on this border. We only hear about the person that when something happens wrong, then you have Ocasio-Cortez and these other left-wing folks talking about how bad it is and how we're not taking care of people and things like that. That's such a false narrative. But that's the false narrative that they want to populate outside of the Laredo area or outside of the folks that really understand the situation, right? So hundreds of people are saved. Some aren't. Some are lost. And that's unfortunate. But it's the unscrupulous cartel members, human traffickers, that don't care. These are like cattle to them. These aren't human lives. This is a commodity. And people die in back of 18-wheelers, and behind the trunks of vehicles. I mean, it happens every day. They don't care. They only want their $5,000 to $7,000. They've made their delivery, and somebody better pay. And unfortunately, some people pay with their lives.
It's unfortunately modern day slavery. Jerry, just really quick, because we do want to try to take a couple of more questions. So
I just want to, following up, I am glad to see folks like this young lady become engaged in this debate and in this dialogue. You need more engagement in delivering the message of clearly that people need to listen and stop talking. Listen more to those that are down there. We are safe because we have the rule of law and we have good people protecting us every day. But there's one thing that it's lacking. The policies that are coming out of Washington are lacking in common sense. That's where we need to make sure we educate them and come up with these ideas that are good for all, not for just for some. And the rhetoric that's out there gets nastier and nastier because the federal government refuses to sit down with those of us that are out there on the ground, listening to those of us that work and live there every day, and listen to our ideas on how we can improve and maintain that security that we need. I feel safe in Laredo. I'm surrounded where I live with U.S. Marshals and Border Patrol agents. These are all citizens of Laredo first. But they're doing their job, protecting us. And they're doing the job that Washington has basically tasked them to do. The challenge is that sometimes the policies don't change. You take the Border Patrol agent when he captures that coyote with 25 guys that paid $70,000, what's the punishment? A law says the punishment for that guy is going to be 6 months in jail.
That's it.
Now, that law's got to change. That's a policy that comes out of Washington. So, number two is that what is the law that says you employ illegal folks? Where are you there with it? Those are laws that need to be really changed and reviewed so that we can do what we all do, have a good quality of life.
Okay. Excellent points. I'm sorry. Let's move on, and I really want to try to get at least one or two more questions in. So, go ahead.
I don't have a question. My name is James Hernandez. I am the Republican candidate for District 34 House of Representatives. Senator Flores, I want to thank you. Best way I can thank you, my name is James Hernandez. I am the owner and master electrician of Landmark Electric. I gained my education in high school where I skilled trade, and then now I'm a master electrician. Went through the craft training center, so skilled trade does work. My area is it's a highly impoverished neighborhoods, working class, and college isn't for everybody. My grandfather showed that to me. He worked at Sherwin Aluminum 30-something years. So we come from a family of blue-collar workers, and here I am today, full of everybody here. So it's with great roots and with support like yours for education of trades that I'm able to be here. So thank you, and Sergio, thanks for your
You're
comments
welcome.
about
Thank
education.
you.
Thank you. Great.
Can I just make one brief comment? Back to Ms. Witten's question, the state of Texas continued to invest $800 million in border security to enhance border security, and then also millions upon millions of dollars in our infrastructure in South Texas. I think we just opened a groundbreaking on the Loop in Laredo. Highway 16 is under construction. So the state of Texas continues to invest millions upon millions, if not billions, into South Texas. So yes, sorry that you have some disappointment in the state's response, but the state's response has been robust.
We have literally 1 minute left, and there was a question. I think there's a gentleman behind you right there, and then that'll be our last question, and we'll see if we can get that, and then obviously you can speak to our panelists afterwards.
This is for Mr. Sanchez, and I appreciate the panel being here, appreciate the comments, but about 6 years ago, the FBI did a raid in Hidalgo County and arrested 59 folks, including the sheriff and his son, who was a police officer. And like you said, sir, we only get the 2-minute blip, and then they forget about it. Can you discuss the impact that those arrests and prosecutions have had on the county? Is it better than it was before?
Slightly. We've been tiptoeing around the tulips, and I'm going to go back to what this young lady said. I think look, we have an electorate that is woefully misinformed and will follow candidates and support candidates at the polls based on popularity, or in South Texas, based on what a politiquero, a campaign worker, has been paid to move a certain population in a certain direction. Politics, as usual in Texas, has to change. And unless courageous young men, women, whatever, just citizens stand up and get in the process, run for office, school district, city hall, county, things are not going to change. Things are not going to change because Texas is trending wrong, people. And look, I know this is a nonpartisan panel. Texas is voting wrong. And that last senatorial election that we went through, it should have, I know you pay attention to what's going on, it should have sent, it probably, like it did for me, a cold shiver up your spine. Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, they're blue as the Rio Grande Valley, as blue as Laredo. And Henry, if you're watching this thing online, I love you, boy, but you vote wrong, and we do need a wall. We do need a wall. You know where we need the wall? We need the wall where Border Patrol says we need the wall, working in conjunction with the administration. And then we need all types of equipment to secure the border. And another thing, Texas shouldn't have to be spending $800 million out of our own state budget to secure the border. We need to get that money refunded to the state of Texas from Washington, and we have an administration that we can kind of bend his ear, and maybe we can get that once we start voting right. We are at a disadvantage in the U.S. House. This asylum thing was being gamed since the Obama administration. They come in here, they claim asylum, and they get released into the population for a court date. And that's where we have tens upon tens and tens of thousands of illegal immigrants that came, and they never show up in court.
93% never come back.
Yep.
And to Henry Cuellar's credit, if you give me 30 seconds, Mr. Chairman, Senator Cornyn and Henry Cuellar, we have court tents. This is another, if you probably don't know about, we have immigration court tents in Laredo, in Brownsville. The Central Americans are in Mexico waiting for their turn to cross the river, come over here. Why? It's not because the Democrats changed policy in Washington to put that. It's not because present leadership in the U.S. House that has been in the way, not changing policy. We are voting wrong as a nation unless we start voting right, determined to secure the border and vote for the candidates. And mostly, the reality is they're mostly all Republicans. But any Democrat stands up and says, I'm willing to secure the border, work with the president to secure the border, you got to vote for that person. Because that's priority. Yeah. That's priority number one. All right. And these policies that we have on the border right now are all improvised, and Mexico is doing more to secure the border than the present leadership up in the U.S. House.
All right, Sergio. So obviously we have exhausted our time. I want to thank you all. Please thank this stellar panel, and thank you all. And I ask you humbly, please keep South Texas in your heart and your mind, and we are part of Texas too. Thank you all.